Story 1. The Whistler in the Woods. Some sounds are not meant to be answered. I was 22 that summer, home from university and tasked with watching my parents' house while they toured Europe for 3 weeks. The arrangements seemed simple enough. Water the plants, collect the mail, enjoy the solitude. Their house sat on the edge of a sparse forest, the kind of woods that feel ancient even in daylight, where the trees grow just far enough apart to let you see deep into the shadows without ever feeling certain of what might be looking back. For the first week, everything felt normal. I'd wake late, make coffee, drive to my part-time job at the library, return home to microwave dinners and television static. My friend Marcus would come by some evenings, and we'd drink cheap beer on the back porch, talking about nothing important, watching the tree line darken as the sun dropped below the horizon. But on the 8th night, something changed. I was sprawled on the couch watching some forgettable crime show when I heard a low, melodic whistling coming from behind me, from the window that overlooked the backyard. At first, I thought it was wind catching on the siding, that peculiar acoustical trick old houses sometimes play. But then it came again, clearer this time, unmistakably deliberate. 3 notes, rising and falling like a question being asked in a language I didn't speak. I turned and peered through the glass, but saw only my own reflection staring back, the dark yard beyond, revealing nothing. Still, the sound had hooked something primal in my brain, that ancient warning system we inherit from prey animals. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I needed to check the exterior, find the loose piece of trim or gutter that was causing the noise before it drove me insane over the next 2 weeks. I stepped out the back door into the cooling evening air. The backyard stretched 30 yards before surrendering to the woods, and I walked its perimeter, checking the siding, the window frames, finding nothing obviously wrong. That's when I heard it again, not from the house, but from the forest itself. The same 3 notes, patient and probing, coming from somewhere deep in the trees where the darkness had already claimed complete territory. Every muscle in my body locked. I couldn't see anything, couldn't hear anything beyond my own breathing and the distant hum of the highway half a mile away. Then the whistle came again, slightly closer, and I didn't wait to hear a 4th repetition. I ran back inside, locked the door, checked it twice, then checked every other door and window in the house. That night I slept poorly, startling awake at every settling floorboard and creaking beam. For 3 days afterward, nothing happened. No whistling, no strange sounds, no shadows moving wrong in the backyard. I began to convince myself I'd imagined the whole thing, or at least exaggerated it in my memory. Marcus thought I was being paranoid when I mentioned it, laughing and suggesting I'd been watching too many horror movies. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had simply spooked myself living alone in a house too large and too quiet. But on the 4th night, I woke to that sound again, and this time it was directly outside my 2nd floor bedroom window. My eyes snapped open in the darkness. The whistle was so clear, so close. It sounded like someone was pressing their face against the glass. My heart hammered against my ribs as I lay frozen beneath my blanket, afraid to move, afraid to look, afraid to confirm what I already somehow knew. Slowly, moving only my eyes at first, I turned my head toward the window. The curtains were partially open, and in the gap between fabric and frame, I could see him. A man stood on nothing. My window was 15 feet off the ground, simply suspended there in the night, staring directly at me with eyes that caught the faint streetlight from the road. His face was lean and weathered, expression utterly neutral, and as I watched in paralyzed horror, he pursed his lips. The whistle came again, crystal clear through the glass. Those same 3 notes I'd heard in the backyard. And I understood then, with terrible certainty, that this was not the first time Head played this melody, not the first window Head visited, not the first person Head watched sleep. I threw myself under the covers like a child, pulling the blanket over my head and squeezing my eyes shut, my breath coming in ragged gasps that sounded deafening in the enclosed space. I stayed that way for hours, too terrified to move, too terrified to look again, waiting for the sound of breaking glass that never came. When morning finally arrived and weak sunlight crept across the bedroom floor, I called Marcus and begged him to come stay. He arrived that evening with his overnight bag, still half convinced I was losing my mind, but willing to humor me anyway. Of course, that night, with Marcus sleeping on the couch downstairs, nothing happened. No whistling, no faces at windows, No inexplicable sounds from the forest. We stayed up late playing video games and eating pizza, and when I finally went to bed around 2 in the morning, I felt foolish for having panicked. Marcus ribbed me about it the next morning over coffee, doing an exaggerated impression of me cowering under the blankets, and I laughed along because what else could I do? He left around noon, and I spent the rest of the day trying to convince myself that exhaustion and isolation had conspired to manufacture the entire experience. But deep down, in that primitive part of the brain that still remembers when humans were prey, I knew better. The whistling didn't return that night, or the next, or the one after that. A week passed without incident and I began to relax, falling back into my routine of work and television and occasional visits from Marcus. My parents called from Barcelona and I assured them everything was fine, that the house was in perfect condition, that I was managing beautifully. I didn't mention the whistling or the face at the window because I could already hear my mother's concerned voice suggesting I see someone, talk to a professional, maybe take a break from school if the stress was getting to me. Then, on a Tuesday evening while I was washing dishes, I heard it again just once, a single short whistle that seemed to come from inside the wall behind the refrigerator. I dropped the plate I'd been scrubbing and it shattered in the sink, sending shards skittering across the counter. I stood there dripping dishwater on the floor, listening so hard my ears rang, but the sound didn't repeat. Maybe it was the pipes, I told myself, or some small animal that had gotten into the walls. Old houses make strange noises. Everyone knows that. But the following week, it happened again. This time, a brief whistle from the hallway closet as I walked past it. And 3 days later, a whistle from the basement door that made me take the stairs 2 at a time to get away from it. Each occurrence was brief, isolated, impossible to predict or explain, and each one wound my nerves tighter until I was jumping at every ordinary sound, seeing threats in every shadow. I started sleeping with my bedroom light on, door locked, a chair wedged under the handle. I stopped going into certain rooms unless absolutely necessary. The house that had felt like a peaceful retreat now seemed to be watching me, breathing around me, waiting for something. My parents returned home 4 days ago, tanned and full of stories about architecture and museums and wonderful meals. I moved back to my apartment near campus without explaining why Id left 3 days earlier than planned, why I looked so tired, why I flinched when my father closed a door too loudly. Last night I got a text from my mother asking if Id heard any strange noises while house-sitting, mentioning that she keeps hearing an odd whistling sound near the windows at night. I haven't responded yet because I don't know what to say, don't know how to explain that whatever I encountered hasn't left, that it's chosen to stay, that it's still there in that house with them. Before we dive deeper, I need to mention something important. Subscribe if you dare to follow where these stories lead, because some paths, once started, are difficult to leave behind. Here is a question that might keep you awake. What melody would you whistle if you wanted someone to remember you forever? The first person to answer correctly will receive a small reward from me, the storyteller, tonight, as a way of saying thank you for watching and supporting. And while you're here in this moment, suspended between fear and curiosity, I'm curious where in the world you're watching this from. Drop your local time and location in the comments below. Now then, let me tell you what happened when Marcus decided to investigate the woods himself 3 nights ago. The story of the Whistler was far from over, and what we discovered made me realize that some sounds, once heard, are never truly forgotten because they're not meant as communication, but as marking, the way predators leave signs on territory they've claimed. And my parents' house, with its dark windows and surrounding forest, had been marked long before I ever arrived that summer. Story 2. The Arranged Attack. Trust is a weapon that cuts deepest when wielded by those closest to you. I was 24 when I learned this lesson, and the teacher was a woman I thought I loved. Her name was Susie, and we'd been dating for 8 months when the incident happened. 8 months that now feel like a carefully constructed lie, a performance I was too blind to see through. The night started with something absurdly trivial, a text message on my phone from a girl I barely knew, someone from a party weeks earlier who was asking about edibles and prices. I'd gone to the bathroom, just a normal trip to piss and wash my hands. And when I returned to the living room, Susie was holding my phone with an expression I'd never seen before, something cold and calculating beneath the theatrical anger. She started asking questions, her voice rising with each one, demanding to know who this girl was, if I was cheating, if I found her attractive, and then the question that should have warned me something was fundamentally wrong. If this girl was standing here right now, who would I choose to kiss? The specificity of that question, the strange hunger in how she asked it, should have triggered alarms, but I was too focused on defending myself, on explaining that the girl in question didn't even like men, that this was about drugs, not romance, that Susie was being irrational. We argued for 20 minutes, our voices getting louder, the conversation circling the same points over and over, until I finally looked at the clock and saw it was 11 at night. I told her this was stupid, that we should stop fighting and either watch a movie or go to sleep since she was staying over anyway. She agreed, but her agreement came too quickly, too easily, and she kept her eyes on her phone as we settled onto the couch to watch Don't Be a Menace. I tried to focus on the movie, but I kept noticing Susie typing frantically on her phone, her thumbs moving with urgent purpose, and whenever I leaned over to see what was consuming her attention, she'd angle the screen away and give me her shoulder, literally turning her body to exclude me. The movie played on and I felt increasingly uneasy. That same primal warning system that kept our ancestors alive, whispering that something was wrong, that the air pressure had changed, that a storm was coming. At 1 a.m, someone knocked on the door. Not the doorbell, but a heavy knock that sounded like a fist against wood. The kind of knock police make when they're not asking permission. My mother called from her bedroom asking who was there at this hour, and I called back that I didn't know, but I was checking, while in my peripheral vision, I saw Susie's face flicker with something that might have been anticipation. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole to see a tall man dressed entirely in black standing on my porch, his face partially shadowed but clearly visible enough to see he wasn't delivering anything legitimate. I asked through the door what he wanted, and his response came in a voice too deep and too calm. "I'm just here to drop off a package. Sorry I'm late." The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. What delivery service operates at 1 a.m? So I told him to leave and come back during normal hours if he had legitimate business. His response was immediate and chilling. No. Just that single word, delivered like a command. Like he was the one in control of this situation and I was the fool for not understanding. That's when Susie appeared beside me, and the grin on her face told me everything I needed to know before she even opened her mouth. She asked again about the girl who'd texted me, her voice sing-song and mocking, and when I said this wasn't the time, that there was a stranger trying to get into our house, she dropped the mask completely. "The guy at the door," she said, "is here to get rid of you." I gave a nervous laugh because surely this was a joke. Surely she was just trying to scare me after our argument. But her smile widened and she said, "Yeah, it is funny. At least for me it is." And I realized with ice-water clarity that she meant every word. The man outside was now actively trying to force the door open, turning the handle and throwing his weight against it while I leaned hard against the wood to keep it closed. And Susie disappeared down the hallway, only to return moments later holding a kitchen knife, the long one we used for cutting meat. And she looked at me with eyes that held no recognition, no trace of the person I thought I'd known for 8 months. "Either he gets you or I will," she said. And I understood then that this wasn't spontaneous rage or a moment of insanity, but something planned, coordinated, that she'd been texting her cousin or brother or hired killer throughout the entire movie, giving him our address and timing and instructions while I sat beside her watching comedy sketches and eating popcorn. The police arrived because my mother, who Id thought was asleep, had been listening to everything and had called 911 from her bedroom, explaining the situation in whispered urgency, while pretending to be unconscious so Susie wouldn't realize we had help coming. When I heard the commanding voice outside shout back away from the door, or well, shoot, I wrenched it open and found 2 officers with weapons drawn. And behind me, Susie stood frozen with the knife still in her hand, so close I could feel her breath on my neck. The officer's voice made her drop the weapon immediately, the blade clattering on the hardwood floor, and they arrested both her and the man outside, handcuffing them and reading rights while I stood there shaking, unable to process what had almost happened. My mother emerged from her room and held me while I finally broke down, the adrenaline draining away and leaving only the horrible understanding that someone I'd shared a bed with, someone I'd introduced to my family, someone I'd trusted with the mundane details of my daily life, had orchestrated my murder over a text message about marijuana. The police took statements and searched the man's vehicle, finding zip ties, duct tape, a tarp, and a folding shovel in his trunk, the toolkit of someone who'd planned not just to kill but to disappear a body. At the station, Susie confessed everything with what the detective later described as disturbing pride. explaining that Shed had been planning this for weeks after seeing me talk to another girl at a bar, that the text message was just the excuse Shed had been waiting for, that her cousin owed her a favor and was happy to help eliminate what she called a problem. The cousin had a record for assault and had served time for armed robbery, and had parked down the street for nearly an hour waiting for Susie's signal to approach the house. Their plan had been for him to force entry while she kept me distracted and disoriented. Then together they'd subdue me and stage it to look like a home invasion gone wrong. A random act of violence with no connection to her. Shed already packed a bag that was hidden in her car, ready to play the traumatized girlfriend who'd barely escaped with her life. The detective showed me transcripts of their text conversation, and I read message after message of Susie describing exactly how she wanted it done, what she wanted to watch happen, the level of detail suggesting Shed fantasized about this scenario long before that particular night. Reading those messages, seeing the casual way she discussed my death like she was planning a party, made me physically ill, and I had to leave the room to vomit in a police station bathroom while an officer waited outside to make sure I was okay. They were both charged with conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and several other crimes. I can't remember because I was in shock for weeks afterward, barely sleeping, jumping at every sound, unable to trust my own judgment about people since it'd been so catastrophically wrong about Susie. 7 years have passed, and I still think about that night. Still wonder what I missed in those 8 months. What signs I ignored or rationalized away. Susie is serving 15 years and her cousin got 20 because of his prior record and the weapons charges. But knowing they're locked away doesn't erase the knowledge that someone looked at me and saw not a person, but an obstacle to be removed. A problem with a violent solution. I've had other relationships since then, but I've never moved past a certain point. Never let anyone get close enough to see all of me, because the last person I trusted completely tried to have me killed over jealousy and a text message about drugs. My mother saved my life that night by staying calm and calling for help instead of panicking, and I've never been able to properly thank her because what words exist for that? Sometimes I see couples arguing in public, voices raised over some petty disagreement, and I have to walk away because I know how quickly love can metastasize into something murderous, how thin the line is between passion and violence, how easily someone can decide that if they can't have you, then no one should. The most terrifying part isn't that Susie wanted me dead. It's how close she came to succeeding. How if my mother had actually been asleep, or if the police had arrived 2 minutes later, I would have been just another statistic, another domestic homicide, another story people would hear and say they saw it coming, even though no one ever does. Story 3. The Facebook Stalker. Every prank has consequences, but some consequences arrive at your window with a knife. I was 13 when I learned this, and the lesson came from a man named Frank, who taught me that anonymity is an illusion and cruelty always finds its way home. It was a Friday night sleepover at my friend Paul's house, the kind of unremarkable evening that shouldn't have become a memory I still carry with acute clarity 15 years later. We'd spent hours doing what stupid teenage boys do, eating McDonald's until our stomachs hurt, playing video games until our eyes burned, watching horror movies we were too young for, and pretending we weren't scared. Around 10:30, we logged into a fake Facebook account We'd created specifically for nights like this. An anonymous profile we used to troll people we knew, leaving idiotic comments and sending messages we thought were hilarious, but were really just cruel, in that thoughtless way teenagers specialize in. We scrolled through profiles looking for targets and found Frank, a black guy from our area whose page showed he was heavily muscled and covered in tattoos, the kind of person who advertised physical intimidation as identity, for reasons that make no sense to me now. We thought it would be funny to call him. His phone number was listed right there in his bio, practically an invitation in our adolescent minds, and we didn't consider for even a moment that listing a phone number publicly might be intentional, might be a man saying, "Go ahead. I dare you. I'm not afraid of anything you might do." The phone rang twice before he answered with a gruff yeah, and Paul immediately launched into some joke about Frank's appearance, something about his muscles or tattoos. I can't remember exactly because we were laughing too hard at our own wit to care about the actual content. Frank's response was immediate cursing and yelling with a rage that seemed disproportionate until you realized Wed called a stranger's phone after midnight to mock him, had violated his space from behind the safety of anonymity, and expected no consequences. We hung up laughing our heads off, high-fiving each other like Wed accomplished something, and then we went back to commenting on random people's posts with childish insults and making more prank calls to other numbers we found. each successful harassment feeding our sense of invincibility. The night continued like this until around 1 in the morning, when exhaustion finally started winning over adrenaline and we settled in to watch another movie, this one something forgettable playing while we both fought against sleep. Then Paul's phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. The message was simple, "That's so funny," followed by an attached image. We opened the picture and saw a street sign, one we recognized immediately because it was maybe 6 blocks from Paul's house. Close enough to walk, close enough to matter. We looked at each other with the first stirrings of genuine fear, the kind that comes when you realize actions have consequences and those consequences are physically approaching your location. Paul asked, "What if he comes to my house?" his voice higher than normal. And I tried to calm him down by pointing out that being near the neighborhood wasn't the same as knowing exactly where we were, that Frank was probably just trying to scare us and didn't actually have our address. We tried to focus on the movie, but the ease was gone, replaced by a hyper-awareness of every sound outside, every car passing on the street, every branch scraping against the siding. 10 minutes later, another text arrived, no picture this time, just 3 words. "Look outside." We both froze completely, our bodies understanding the danger before our minds could fully process it. The lights in the living room were off, so no one outside could see in, which gave me enough courage to creep slowly to the window and peek through the blinds. I scanned the empty street, looking for anything unusual, any car that shouldn't be there, any figure standing in shadows, but I saw nothing, just the ordinary suburban night landscape of parked cars and streetlights and quiet houses. I told Paul there was no one out there, that it was definitely just a text meant to freak us out, and he checked for himself before agreeing, though neither of us sounded particularly convinced. We tried to believe our own reassurances, tried to let the tension drain away, but it stayed lodged in our chests like a physical object, making breathing feel difficult. An hour passed without any additional texts, and we started making noodles in the kitchen, finally allowing ourselves to relax slightly, to believe maybe the whole thing was over. Then Paul's phone rang. Unknown number. We looked at it like it was a living thing that might bite, and I told him, "Don't answer. Absolutely do not answer." But the ringing seemed to fill the entire kitchen with its urgency. The phone stopped ringing, and we both exhaled. But then Paul made a mistake. Born from guilt and fear, he texted the number saying, "I'm sorry if we upset you, but it was just a prank," an apology that revealed we were scared, that we understood we'd crossed a line, that we were just kids who'd made a stupid mistake. The response came not as a text, but as illumination. A phone screen lighting up just outside the kitchen window, its glow revealing the face behind it, and Frank was standing in Paul's backyard staring directly at us with an expression of pure rage. He was even larger in person than his profile picture suggested, his frame filling the window frame, and in his other hand he held a knife with a blade that caught the porch light as he raised it and dragged it across the glass at neck height, drawing an invisible line where our throats would be if the window wasn't there. The scraping sound it made was somehow worse than the sight, a screech that communicated intent more clearly than any words could. We screamed and ran, our feet slipping on the kitchen tile as we scrambled for the stairs, taking them 3 at a time to reach Paul's parents' bedroom. We pounded on their door, and they opened it, confused and alarmed. And we tried to explain through gasping breaths that a man was in the backyard, that he had a knife, that he was trying to hurt us. Paul's father grabbed a baseball bat and went downstairs with his wife, calling 911, while Paul's mother held us both, and when his father checked the backyard, Frank was gone, vanished back into the night, as completely as had appeared. We didn't tell the full truth about why Frank had come, because we were terrified of getting in trouble, of our parents finding out we'd been harassing strangers online, so we claimed he must have been trying to rob the house and saw us through the window. The police came and took a report, searched the area and found nothing, and eventually everyone went back to bed except Paul and me. We stayed awake until dawn broke, sitting in his room with the light on and the door locked, jumping at every settling house noise. We never pranked or trolled anyone again after that night, never made another fake Facebook account, never thought online harassment was funny, because we'd learned in the most visceral way possible that the internet doesn't actually protect you, that every action traces back to a physical location, that anonymous cruelty is never truly anonymous. We never heard from Frank directly after that night, never got another text or call, but we didn't need to. His message had been delivered perfectly clearly through that kitchen window. For months afterward, I had nightmares about his face appearing in glass, about that knife scraping across windows in my own house, about the specific quality of rage in his eyes that said he wasn't just angry, but willing to act on that anger in permanent ways. Paul and I remained friends, but we never had another sleepover at his house, the kitchen forever contaminated by that memory, and we never talked about that night except in the most oblique terms, as if discussing it directly might somehow summon Frank back into our lives. Hello, I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together. That Wed accidentally triggered something in him that wanted violence and had come very close to receiving it. I've never told this story to anyone outside my immediate family because admitting what we did feels like confessing to a crime, and in a way it was Wed committed a small cruelty and nearly paid for it with consequences far exceeding the offense. Every time I see a news story about online harassment or cyberbullying, I think about Frank in that kitchen window and how easily teenage stupidity can cascade into genuine danger. The internet has convinced an entire generation that their actions don't have real-world consequences, that screens provide actual protection, that people on the other end of comments and messages aren't real in any meaningful sense. But they are real, and some of them know how to find you, and some of them are willing to show up at your window with a knife to prove it.